Toronto Maple Leafs have a golden opportunity as they enter the biggest regular season game of the year and one of the biggest games of the regular season in the past decade for this team. We have multiple updates surrounding the game tonight. We're going to discuss what that means as well as discuss the direct implications that it has going forward on this postseason run, as they have much bigger implications than a lot of fans think. So stay tuned for all that in this episode. Again, we also have a couple other interesting updates ahead of the game. Before we get into it, if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, it's the place to be for daily Leafs content. Your guys' support has been unbelievable. So if you want to help us towards our goal of 17,000 subscribers, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And thank you guys again for your continued support. There's a lot to go over today, and this is the biggest game of the year tonight, and you could argue it's one of the biggest regular season games in the past decade for this team since the Core 4 started, because the implications that this specific game has on the postseason is huge, and especially it's, way bigger now following the brutal loss yesterday. You were obviously there for the post-game stream, and I want to dive into it right away here. There's a lot of math being done, but the game tonight, simply put, it is huge, because if you win, you really separate yourselves a little bit. There's only 4 or so games left of the regular season. A win tonight essentially locks us into the first round matchup with Ottawa. Tampa wins, and we basically need more points than Tampa gets in the final 4 games to make it happen. A 50% swing, depending on if we win or lose. Any OT result is also cool. So, Darius, I want to dive into this with you here. You look at the chart. Shout out to the person who made this chart. I believe it was the person who tweeted this, but regardless, whoever made the chart, shout out to them. If you win tonight, you have a 92.5% chance to get first in the division. But if they lose, that drops all the way down to a 43.5% chance. And with the Panthers seemingly trying to win again, you need to get first in the Atlantic Division. I think at this point, at least me personally, I think some Leafs fans are starting to change their turn a little bit. I think we'd rather play the Ottawa Senators in the first round, or maybe what will be the Montreal Canadiens, depending on how things go, but probably the Ottawa Senators in the first round. I don't want to play Florida in the first round. I don't really want to play Tampa in the first round either. They've been playing very good hockey. Again, no matter what happens, I think the Leafs will be fine, but they need to win the Atlantic Division, and tonight basically secures you into that spot.
Yeah, you have to give yourself the best chance possible, and the Leafs have an opportunity to do that tonight in this game. And, a couple weeks ago, we were talking about how it's either Ottawa or Tampa Bay. And at this point, Tampa Bay's been playing so well that they could actually still win the division at this point in time before the game against the Toronto Maple Leafs. And, the Florida Panthers have dropped to that third position. So it's either the Florida Panthers or the Ottawa Senators now at this point. I think we all know who we'd rather play. And I think that not even who you'd rather play, it would be a fun series to watch the Battle of Ontario again. And not only that, give yourself the best chance possible. Win the division. Finish first. Give yourself home ice through majority of the playoffs. You never know what's going to happen throughout the playoffs, but give yourself the best chance possible to have home ice for the majority of the playoffs. And with a win tonight, this is a swing game, right? Like, you can really create some separation where even if Tampa continues to win the rest of the season, you still control your own destiny in your hands. And obviously, Tampa could still finish first even if they lose tonight and the Leafs beat them, but you give yourself a really good opportunity. So don't lose, right? Then you're in a little bit of trouble here. You're going to have to play really well the rest of the season, which I'm sure they will, but then you don't control your own destiny, right? So go out, get this win. This is a big win. This is something that gives you the best chance possible to succeed in the playoffs. And not only that, the Leafs have only ever won 2 division titles, and one of them was in 2021, which was the North Division. Doesn't really count. So it'd be nice to actually win a division title. And yes, the ultimate goal is a Stanley Cup, but so many other teams have banners and are able to say we won the division in previous years. The Leafs have never really been able to do that. So why not go out and win a division and then, make your way through the playoffs as well?
Yeah, and obviously, as you look through the chart here, I mean, again, these are just numbers, but if you win tonight's game, you have basically a confirmed chance to win the division, depending on how things shake out, especially with the last couple games of the Leafs year being against, in theory, easier opponents, depending on how you judge those. We know how the Leafs go with that. Regulation loss or win are kind of both fine at this point. Obviously, loss not regulation, overtime, and overtime loss would be a little bit rough, but it is going to be a big one. It's very rare, and we spoke about it way back at the start of the season, how the regular season for the Leafs over the past few years hasn't really been exciting towards the end. We're basically getting playoff games in early April at this point, and that's what tonight's going to feel like, and we haven't heard basically anything surrounding, we haven't heard much at least surrounding what the lines are going to be like as of today. Of course, we're not skating. It's the second night of a back-to-back. We do have a couple updates that we can, presume here, but you look at the division, it got tight fast, 98, 96, 94, 90, and the Montreal Canadiens, I believe, are at 87 now with a chance to obviously, compete with the Senators, and I wouldn't like a Toronto Maple Leafs, Montreal Canadiens, matchup in the first round just because, 2021 and things like that. But for the optics and for the NHL, I'm sure the NHL, from a viewer standpoint, would be pushing for that heavy here. You can see this here. It may sound hyperbolic, but there's a case to be made that Wednesday's game versus the Tampa Bay Lightning is the most important regular season contest of the Maple Leafs core 4 era. And that is what, I alluded to in the intro there. It is, because no matter what happens in this game tonight, of course, the playoff is what matters the most. But this has such direct implications, and it's very rare that you see something, that a game or one game that has such a huge swing, even in the advanced analytic department. It is going to be absolutely crazy tonight. The Tampa Bay Lightning are ready to go. Their lines, they've been playing fantastic, and whether or not you think they're, Leafs are a good matchup, they've been playing fantastic. And the Leafs are coming off of a game where they got completely shut down defensively, especially by the forward group of the Panthers. This is it's a bit of a nerve-wracking one. It is by far the biggest game that we've seen in the past. You could argue past decade, regular season.
It's a big, yeah, definitely. It's a huge game. And I think if, put yourself in the Tampa Bay Lightning shoes for a second too. If we win this game tonight, we, tie for first, and then we have an opportunity to finish first, win the division, and we don't have to play the Florida Panthers in the first round. Tampa Bay doesn't want to play the Florida Panthers either. You would rather, especially if you're the Lightning, with all these, veterans on your team and guys who've won the Stanley Cup, you'd rather play a team like the Ottawa Senators, who haven't made the playoffs since 2017, and almost the entire lineup has no playoff experience. You would rather that. But if, again, being in the Leaf shoes, it's a must-win game as well, right? Like, this is a must-win game for both teams that has serious playoff implications. So it's going to be a playoff atmosphere. The games are always really good, especially in Tampa with the atmosphere. How many Leaf fans go down to Florida to watch those games out there in Tampa? So should have a playoff feel. It should be another physical game, and we'll see if the Leafs rise to the occasion this time. They were kind of, played out of the building last night. It was absolutely brutal, right? And I know that Florida had all these things going for them with a couple guys returning from injury, and something's got to give with a team like that at some point. They can't continue to lose that much. But heading into tonight, this is a big game, right? Focus on this one. You have to come in business as usual, get the job done, and we'll see where they go from here. It's going to be tough if they lose this game, but you're in a great spot if you win this game. So hopefully they recognize the opportunity that is in front of them tonight.
Yeah, you do not want to lose it, especially with the Leafs. Then they would lose a tiebreaker. It has a bunch of subsequent things. A few other things before we wrap up here. Of course, John Tavares, just kind of want to shout out the fact that he's in year 7. He's still a $10 million player. I think this will be the difference in the postseason and, of course, the regular season, but specifically, the rest of the regular season. But the postseason, if the Leafs go far, it'll be because of how good John Tavares had. A bit of resurgence here for him, especially being one of the better players on the Leafs this season. You could argue he's one of the best players this season, and there's still the goalie conversation. Like, there's so many storylines, and Stolarz are going to be in net tonight. You can see here some people are saying that they would start Joseph Woll, obviously, and then there's some people saying they should start Anthony Stolarz. That conversation is still being thrown up. I would still take Anthony Stolarz pretty clearly, even though Woll didn't have necessarily a bad game yesterday by any means. 2 goals against the Panthers, 1 empty net goal. But it's crazy now. And as you look at the projected lines, again, these lines are from yesterday, but you would assume they're going to be running a very similar lineup, just given the fact of the injuries. You don't have much wiggle room here. You assume the blue line is going to be the same. Stolarz is going to start again. These were the lines in yesterday's game, but we'd have to, presume there. Anything you think is going to change in tonight's game? Maybe, they change Aaron Croak and Robertson, something like that. Maybe in the bottom 6, they make a couple changes, but the top 6 is secure, and the blue line is secure as well.
We saw Robertson last night at times play on the third line. So I'm wondering what it's going to look like going into tonight's game if Robertson's on the third line, Yarncroke's on the fourth line. So we'll see closer to game time what the exact lineup looks like. I think the defense pairings are going to stay the same. We know Stolarz is going to start. It makes absolutely no sense for, Woll to play 2 games back-to-back here, or a back-to-back, I should say. It could make sense for him to play back-to-back games, but heading into this weekend too, they have another back-to-back Saturday, Sunday. So it's going to be Stolarz tonight. I'm excited to see what he's going to be able to do against the Lightning too. But in terms of the forward group, I don't think there's too much wiggle room anymore, especially with some of the injuries. Pacioretty can't come back yet. It's going to be maybe, who starts on what line tonight. So that's going to be interesting to watch. But I think they've almost solidified their lineup to this point if everyone's healthy. Obviously, David Kamp's going to be there. Holmberg will come out. And then, where does Pacioretty go? So we're getting close, but I am curious to see, the last 2 games, have they changed the mind of Craig Berube?
Yeah, and speaking of the top 2 lines, you have Matthew Knies coming out. And again, we know yesterday I covered that Berube said he's playing playoff hockey. Hopefully that can continue tonight. And Matthew Knies spoke out himself. It's always going to be physical. We always expect it to be a battle when we come in here. I think our physicality and play, we're soft in some areas. We're going to need to learn how to do that when it comes to playoff time. That was following the brutal loss yesterday against the Panthers. So you love to see this from your leader. One of the, hopefully the Leafs extend him in the offseason there. But Matthew Knies, someone who performed in the playoffs yesterday. Hopefully he can come out and perform tonight in what's going to feel like a playoff game. We're going to have a live stream following the game. Hold on tight, because this one is for the first time in a very long time, this regular season could change everything as it pertains to the Toronto Maple Leafs. And You think about the domino effect this could have if they exit early in the playoffs. We could be looking back at this game thinking that this had huge implications going forward. So thank you guys for watching. See you later.